Om Maganati Mirandasya Gana Gana Sarakaya Chaksurun Militam Yana Tajmai Sugirve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yana Bhutare Sayam Rupakaramayam Darati Swaparandikam Vandeham Siguru Siyata Parakamanam Shigarun Vaishnavam Sja Sirupam Sagadadam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sajevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sirara Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivishikan Vitam Sja Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pasnaya Bhutare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanam Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachanine Nirvishesa Sanyavari Praskata Desadhanine Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narotimam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tito Jyotirare Nashtu Pareshu Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavati Atamashoki Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Nigama Kapaduragaritam Param Shukam Makaramita Joy Samitam Pipata Bhagatam Rashamadam Mahora Hora Shikobubi Babakam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome to Transcendental Tuesday, coming to you from Spanish Fort, Utah. Thanks for weighing in. Govinda Dave, there are 4 other people online thus far. Jimmy and Taruna, thank you very much for your likes, even before I said anything. But by commenting and liking, that's how I know that you're out there. And the more of you that are out there, the more inspired we become to share whatever it is that we can share. We spent no less than 6 days, good morning, Rupa Manjari, we spent no less than 6 days on the last verse, which was the 40th verse, 3rd chapter, 1st canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, Idam Bhagavatam Nama Purana Paramistamitam Uttama Shokacharitam Chakaranashi Nisriyasya Lokasha Danyam Swastina Mahat. So finally, we're moving now to the 41st verse in the 3rd chapter, which is as follows. Yaidam grahayam asha sutam atmavatam varam sarvavedi itihasanam saram samam samudritam. A lot of nectarine words in this verse. Itihasanam means the ancient stories going back as much as tens of thousands and even millions of years, and encompassing events that happened on other planets within this and other universes. Saram means of all, life on every planet, in every universe. Each universe has uncountable planets or uncountable universes. There's life on each and every planet. Bhagavad Gita says, Nenam Chandati Sastrami. Good morning, Soka Krishna. Nenam Dahati Pavaka. The soul cannot be cut by any weapon. It cannot be burned by fire, drowned by water, withered by the wind. So it doesn't matter what the atmosphere of a particular planet is, whether it be more ethereal, like the moon, or whether it be more fiery, like the sun. Life exists under any conditions. Heat cannot burn it, cannot be suffocated, cannot be withered, cannot be drowned. It may have a different organism. There's controversy surrounding some of Prabhupada's statements that we didn't go to the moon. Well, one way of understanding that is that if you go somewhere, right, you should be able to live there and take the benefit of the terrain and the resources that are there. For instance, if you get on a plane in Salt Lake City and go to Honolulu Airport and stay in the airport for 5 hours and then fly back, did you really go to Honolulu? Because one airport's the same as another, and you're in the same environment, whether it's the Salt Lake City Airport or the Honolulu Airport. If you want to experience the distinct uniqueness and the difference between Utah and Hawaii, the very least you have to do is get out of the airport. So, Prabhupada said, we didn't go to the moon. That doesn't necessarily mean that we didn't send a couple of men who touched down on the moon, but it meant that what's the use of spending trillions and trillions of dollars just to go and touch down and bring some rocks back? If you're going to go somewhere, then you should be able to live there and take the benefit of the resources that exist there. I saw a cartoon one time. It was two guys that just stepped foot on the moon, and they were in these big, huge suits. Good morning, Ram Kishore. Like deep sea divers, pressurized suits, because we can't live on the moon in these bodies. If you're actually going to go to the moon, you have to take an ethereal body. And we learn that the moon is a heavenly planet presided over by Chandra. There's less ether there, and it's very cold. So there's a drink called the Soma Rasa, which you drink, it keeps you warm. And it's not an intoxicating beverage. Rather, the more you drink it, the more pious you become. Anyway, be that as it may. You have to take a more ethereal body to be able to go to the moon. And indeed, if you go to the moon, there's a lot of delights that are there. There are a lot of resources there. It's a higher standard of living. There's a longer duration of life. But anyway, these two guys in the cartoon went in. They just exited the ship, and they were in these big, like, diving suits with face plates. One of them is in a celebratory mood, and he says, "Warren, we made it! We're on the moon!" And he throws up his arms like that, and his armored hand hits Warren's faceplate, and it cracks. You see all these cracks, and Warren's like, so, anyway, our point is that, good morning, Sanjay, that there are histories which encompass many, many uncountable planets and uncountable universes and go back in mind-boggling periods of time. And these are called itihasanam, or Puranas. And Sudha Goswami is asked to give the essence, because obviously there's a lot of stories out there. I remember when I was in boarding school during the high school years, I went to a place called Lawrenceville, New Jersey, and we studied American history. There were 2 volumes, really thick volumes, called Morris and Commager, and they just chronicled everything that had happened. Like the Teapot Dome scandal, the Louisiana Purchase, everything that happened, the administration of Grover Cleveland, just one listing everything in a linear chronology. But hardly any of it was morally instructive or character building. In fact, just the opposite. Most of it was embarrassing, unbecoming. Just like if nowadays everybody's keen on getting the blow-by-blow of the recent presidential elections. But I ask you, what part of that is uplifting? If you missed all of the brouhaha about the elections, would you be any the worse off for it, or would you be much the better off for it? So the itihasams of the Puranas, they call through countless histories taking place over countless eons in countless planets and countless universes. And what is the result? What is presented to us are the essential stories that build us up, that inspire us to go to the next level, to be honest, to have integrity, to be virtuous, to look out for our fellow man. And of all the itihasas and all the Puranas, the one which can deliver the most good, take you to the level of immortality, such that you'll never come back and take birth in this material world again, is the Srimad Bhagavatam, the spotless Purana, the story of the Absolute Truth as told through the mouths of his pure devotees, like Prithu Maharaj, like Yamaraj, like the 4 Kumaras, like Dhruva Maharaj, like Prahlad Maharaj. Because it delivers, it's the purest, has no tinge of hankering after material temporary benefits like Dharma, Artha, Karma, Moksha. And just the nature of it is that it delivers one to the lotus feet of the eternal Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. It is called the Maha Purana. There are Puranas in the mode of ignorance for those in the mode of tamagun. There are Puranas for those in the mode of passion, rajagun. There are Puranas for those in the mode of ignorance. But above and beyond all of these is the Maha Purana, the Bhagavad Purana, or the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the ripened fruit of all the Vedic literatures. It presents the cream, the essence of all stories and narrations throughout the entire course of time in the universe. Wow. My mind just kind of went through a little shiver, spasm of ecstasy at the thought of what I just said, at the import, the very weight and pretentiousness of it. How fortunate we are to get this literature. And the compiler, Vyasadeva, who was inspired by his guru, Narada Muni, after having put together all the Vedas, the Mahabharata, voluminous literatures, most of the Vedas have been lost over the course of time. There's only a small fraction of what was once the full volume of Vedic knowledge. Vast literatures covering every area of knowledge. But none of that did Vedavyas consider important enough to entrust to his very own son, Sukadeva Goswami. Good morning, Anjali. Good morning, Prashant. Just the fact that Vyasadeva imparted the Srimad Bhagavatam, and only the Srimad Bhagavatam, to his own son, and obviously whoso has taken birth as the son of Vyasadeva is going to be one of a kind amongst even all the great saints and demigods and sages. So it was his son and his son only that Vyasadeva considered the opus to be so important, so beneficial for human society, that he did not want to give it to any lesser of a personality than his own son, Sukadeva Goswami. So the translation of this verse, you get the feeling we're going to spend more than one day on this verse too, because I'm just getting to the translation. We're 15 minutes into the show and we're just getting to the translation of the verse. Here it is. Srila Vyasadeva delivered the Srimad Bhagavatam to his son, who is the most respected amongst the self-realized, after extracting the cream of all Vedic literatures and histories of the universe. Here's another point also. Historians, such as they are, consider that nothing virtually happened prior to 5,000 years ago. We don't have any written records passed down of any histories on this planet prior to 5,000 years ago. And so they generally think that there wasn't much life, there wasn't much civilization, there wasn't much going on prior to 5,000 years ago. We were just emerging from some sort of prehistoric caveman type of existence, and there began to be the dawning of intelligence and intellect and the urge to chronicle what became an increasingly more and more important history. Not true, bogus, false. The fact of the matter is that the emergence of written materials, of written histories, attested to the waning intellectual capacities and the diminishing lifespan of the inhabitants of planet Earth. Prior to 5,000 years ago, people's lifespan was such that their intellectual prowess was such that their recollection, their memories were such that, you know what I'm going to say now? They didn't have to write things down in order to remember them. They would remember them just by hearing one time. Talk about photographic memory. And the point is that They didn't have to write things down because the recollection, the memory was more accurately and completely preserved within their minds. Now, they had no taste, generally speaking, for mundane literatures. They did not consider it important to chronicle mentally or verbally every single instance and circumstance. Not all happenstances have something to teach us. They also took those essential stories and Puranas, which could most quickly and efficiently get the aspirant a devotee to their goal, whether it was economic development, sense gratification, religiosity, or liberation. And so people were attuned to the spiritual, to the uplifting, to the progressive, not just to memorization of facts and figures by rote. And that's why out of a vast resource of histories, we only get certain instructive ones coming down to us to the present day. The Vedic word, which means education, is Shruti. Shruti means hearing. It doesn't mean writing or reading. It means hearing attentively spiritual subject matters from a spiritually realized person. And this is the way that human society was going on for millennium prior to the emergence of written history. Historians and anthropologists, archaeologists would have us believe that civilization emerged simultaneous with written word and written histories. That is not a fact. Civilization, the civilization was not dawning at that time. It was waning. The sun was not rising 5,000, 4,000, 300, 2,000, 1,000 years ago, but the sun was setting on real, spiritual, God-centered civilization. Prabhupada says, men with a poor fund of knowledge only accept the history of the world prior to, say, the time of Buddha, which is 600 BC. Prior to that, all the histories that are mentioned in the scriptures and the Puranas, people relegate them to something mythological, imaginary. That is not a fact. These are, in fact, to be understood literally for the most part. If it's an allegory, it will tell you in advance it's an allegory, but if it doesn't give you that prelude that this is an allegory, it is to be taken as history. You cannot attain perfect knowledge, perfect realization. You cannot attain success in life by relegating the most instructive histories, which have been culled through countless stories, through countless periods of time and countless planets and countless universes. You cannot push that aside, push it down as mythological, fictional, and achieve success in your life. Shruti Smriti Paranadi Panchariki Aikantiki Hara Bhaktir Udpatayayava Kaupate. Rupa Goswami says, devotional service to the Lord, the execution of the human form of life in a general way, that ignores or minimizes the authorized Vedic literatures, Upanishads, Puranas, Narada, Pancharatra, is simply an unnecessary disturbance in society. These are factual histories going back millions of years, not only histories which have to do with this planet, but millions and millions of planets within other universes. And sometimes these histories, from our limited point of view, appear to be unbelievable, fantastic. But not all planets and not all periods of time are equal. They're not all equal. If something doesn't seem true from our limited place in time and space on this one tiny dot of a planet, doesn't mean that it's not true or that it couldn't have happened somewhere else. The great rishis like Srila Vyasadeva, his son Sukadeva Goswami, Sutta Goswami, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, they had no business putting some imaginary stories in their literature. They were not frivolous personalities. They were personalities with the gravest import and the most serious intent to benefit and to deliver the fallen conditioned souls in this material world back to home, back to God. And of all those histories, which are themselves the essence of millions and millions of historical happenings, the essence of those essential stories is the Maha Purana, or the Srimad Bhagavatam. And why is the Srimad Bhagavatam head and shoulders above the Vedas, the Mahabharats, the Upanishads, etc.? And the special significance of the Srimad Bhagavatam is that it is connected with the activities of the Lord in a different time, a different place, a different atmosphere. The people about whom the Bhagavatam speaks and who the Bhagavatam quotes are an altogether different, in a sense, race of people, inasmuch as they are totally realized. They are totally realized as far as the personality of Godhead is concerned. They are the topmost personalities, and they have all universally and uniformly accepted Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead. Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Povitam Paramam, Purusham Sasvatam Divyam, Adi Deva Jambadum. Arjuna, after hearing from Krishna 9 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, you're the supreme spirit, you're the supreme abode, supreme shelter of all living entities. You're completely poor. Povitam idam uttamam. You have nothing to do with anything mundane. You are above the darkness of this material world. And not only does Arjuna declare it, but he says, Ahush tam rishayar sarve devar shir naradas tata. All the great Asito Deviro, Swayam Cheva Bravesi, all the great sages are unanimous in their opinion. Conclusion that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Not only that, Arjuna says to Krishna, but you yourself are declaring it to me right now. Krishna is not a liar. Krishna cannot but speak that which is truth. In fact, the fact that Krishna speaks it is the absolute truth. There's nothing that's truth other than what Krishna speaks. When Krishna speaks, the law of gravity goes into effect. When Krishna speaks, the sun is placed in the sky. When Krishna speaks, worlds, spiritual and material, come into being. There's nothing aside, in fact, there's nothing existent outside of what Krishna speaks. And there's nothing that Krishna speaks more to the point than the Srimad Bhagavatam. And therefore, of the ocean of Vedic knowledge, which in itself is already distilled from a much greater body of history, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the beautiful story of Krishna, is the cream of the ocean of milk of the Vedic knowledge. All these activities are instructed. Now, having said that, it should be quite obvious that there is no benefit in receiving this great literature from less than realized souls. If they're not in the line of disciplic succession from Narada, from Vyasadeva, from Sukadeva Goswami, from Sukadeva Goswami, Ramanuja, Madhvacharya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there is no gain in accepting the so-called message of the Bhagavatam from unbelievers, atheists, or professional reciters who make a living out of Bhagavatam for the layman. The original Bhagavatam was delivered by the compiler of all the Vedas, Srila Vyasadeva, specifically to his son Sukadeva Goswami. Now, look at the lifestyle of Sukadeva. He exited the womb of his mother. He didn't bother to cover himself with even a thread of cloth. He looked like Krishna. He was so Krishna consciousness. He had the same sham, bluish-black complexion as Krishna. He wandered without any consideration of maintenance or livelihood all over the earth, thinking only of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was deemed a madman by people in general. Children and women used to make fun of him and follow him, shout imprecations at him, throw things at him. He cared not a whit for that. It is said that he would only visit householders. He would only visit one household per day, and then only as long as it would take to get a cup of milk. He simply maintained himself with 1 cup of milk a day, which he obtained by spending a few seconds at the door of each and every householder. And it wasn't to get the milk that Sukadeva Goswami would appear in the doorway of householders, but it was to bless them with his association. Atavasha Padamboja Makaranda Kiman Yara Sarapari Ayushod Yadashadvayaha. It is said that a moment's association with a soul on the level of Sukadeva Goswami is more valuable than anything that's to be had within this world of birth, death, disease, and old age. More valuable even than liberation from birth, death, disease, and old age. Conclusion is that the Srimad Bhagavatam should not be received from a worldly person who is using it to make a living and generate income for their family. It should be received from such a one who is detached and realized and absorbed in thoughts of love of Godhead on the level of Sukadeva Goswami. When Sukadeva Goswami's representative Suta Goswami appeared amongst the sages in Naimisharanya, these words were spoken. Rishaya Uchu, Sanaka speaking on behalf of the rishis gathered there. Twaya Kalo Purana Ni, again that word Purana, ancient stories. Seti Hashani Chanaga. This is the 6th verse, 1st canto, 1st chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Prashant. Thanks for joining us. Manasaganga, Pragna also. Twaya Kalo Puranani Seti Hasani Chanaga Akyatayani Api Aditani Dharma Shastani Tani Uta. The sages said, respected Suta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in all the scriptures, famous for religious life, and in the Puranas and histories as well. You are fully conversant. You have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them. Now here's an important point. Who is suited to pass down Srimad Bhagavatam, the Acharya or the Goswami, has to be well acquainted, obviously, with the literature. But in what sense? They have to have heard and explained them. Heard repeatedly, submissively, heard with the intent to dive into action as a result of what they've heard and as a result of the answers they've received to their inquiries. Prabhupada says to hear and explain is much more important than reading them. We're not reading the literatures just to learn some new facts, to cull some interesting anecdotes. One can assimilate the knowledge of the revealed scriptures only by hearing and explaining repeatedly. The issue is that our hearts have become covered by dust since time immemorial. The conditioned souls such as ourselves have incarnated who knows how many times, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s of times in this material world, on various planets, in various species of life. The impression that we are this body, this reptile's body, this aquatic's body, this mammal's body, this bird body, this demigod's body, this human body is so ingrained within us since so many incarnations, since time immemorial, that one hearing is not going to accomplish what we need to be accomplished. We need to remove the dust from the mirror of the heart so that we can finally see ourselves for who we are, which is eternal spirit souls, part and parcel of God. And anybody knows, where there's dirt which is encrusted, you can't just take one swipe at it. No, you have to rub with elbow grease repeatedly, and gradually over the course of time, the incrustation will break up and dissolve and eventually disappear. Then you have to keep rubbing, because if you don't, it will again become covered with dust and encrusted. That's why even the liberated souls, even after souls reach that point at which the heart is free and clear and clean and reflective of one's own spiritual nature, they don't give up the recitation, the discussion of the Srimad Bhagavatam, because having cleaned the heart, it's important to keep it clean. Therefore, it is said that for all classes of men, those who are impure, those who are pure, those who are without material desires, those who are full of material desires, those who are desirous of liberation, the eternal, ever ongoing duty of the living being is hearing and discussing the topics about the Supreme Personality of Godhead over and over and over and again. Again, let's hear what Arjuna said. Krishna had been talking to him for a half an hour, going over all the important points of self-realization. And it wasn't just like Arjuna was just passively, indifferently hearing, absorbing the message. He was asking questions throughout the whole interchange. He was submissively inquiring, and he would ask Krishna to go over some points again. Why? Why revisit some of the points? Here's the answer. Vishtarena Atmano Yogam Vibhutam cha janardam. Bhuya means again. Can we discuss that again, Krishna? Kataya triptarhi shrinvato nasti memritam. This is the 18th verse in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Vishtarena atmano yagam vibhutam cha janardam bhuya kata tripta shrinvato nasti memritam. O Krishna, says Arjuna, again, please describe in detail. I want more detail. And I want to hear it again and again and again, the mystic power of your opulences. I am never satiated in hearing about you. For the more I hear, the more I want to taste the nectar of your words. Now, Arjuna not only had his ears big, like elephant ears, to take in all that Krishna said, but he was also poised and prepared to act on the instructions that Krishna had given him. Not only was he churning the topics, asking questions and evoking more and more nectar from Krishna, but he had the full intention of going into action as soon as Krishna made his conclusions. Itite jnanam atkatam goyam goyam vimreshetara sheshani yate chachi tata karu. Just towards the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, thus I have explained to you all these areas of knowledge. Now, make your decision and do what you think is right. Arjuna did not respond by saying, I think I'll sleep on it. Oh, I think I'll go home, make some notes, ponder this, meditate upon it. No. As soon as Krishna said those words to Arjuna, he said, now what is your decision? You've inquired, I've given answers, we've gone back and forth, we've churned this. Now what happens? And it's up to you. Krishna says, now what happens is up to the recipient. And Arjuna proves himself a qualified disciple by saying, Nashna mohashmiti tad prashadam stito shmin gatata karisha se vajato tata. I am now free from doubt. I am resolved. I am firmly fixed and prepared to act according to your instructions. Submissive inquiry, discussion, over and over again, repetition, cleansing of the heart, and when the heart is cleansed, one dives into the devotional service of the Lord. Maharishi Parikshit whose name means the examiner. In the very womb of his mother, Parikshit had had darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, who came to save him from the Brahmastra weapon of Ashwatthama. That was how his life began, in the womb, seeing Krishna. He became known as the examiner because all he wanted throughout his entire life was again to see that personality who had saved him within the womb of his mother. He went ahead and exercised all of his duties as a king, diligent, righteous, painstaking, conscientious. He was faultless as a king and reigned without any blemish whatsoever. But when, due to no fault of his own, the last 7 days of his life arrived, he went back again to trying to make a serious effort to find that Supreme Personality of Godhead who had originally appeared before him in the womb. He had many saints and sages surrounding him as he sat prepared to do a vigil for the last 7 years of his life. But when Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, to whom Vyasadeva had entrusted the treasure house of the Srimad Bhagavatam, arrived in the middle assembly, Parikshit could immediately identify him as a representative of Lord Krishna. He was the same complexion as Krishna. He didn't care for material things. He wasn't making a trade of reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam in order to get money, temporary material things. So then, Maharaj Parikshit, upon setting eyes on Sukadeva Goswami, he was so thrilled. Everything was coming full circle. He realized that this is a person who can deliver me to Krishna, who appeared to me within the womb of his mother. And he started the 20,000 verse discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam, in which Parikshit would ask questions and Sukadeva Goswami would answer him. He started it all off with this inquiry. 24th verse, 19th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Tatas java prichami vipuche visvaravi vipra ite kriyataram sarvatma miyamanas chakitam sudatatam sata bhyaktaham. O trustworthy Sukadeva Goswami, I now ask you about my immediate duty. Please, after proper deliberation, tell me of the unalloyed duty of everyone in all circumstances, and specifically of those who are about to die. So Sukadeva Goswami immediately says, Variyanesha te vashna kitam loka admavitsamataham sroti vyadish. King, your question is glorious because it is beneficial to all types of men. Actually, he's asked two questions. What is the duty of one during life? And what is the duty of one at the time of death? And tomorrow we'll start off with the assertion that of the two questions, the one inquiring about one's duty at the time of death is the more important of the two questions, because what you have done in life determines what you'll do at the time of death. So the time of death is the testing point. It determines how you've lived your life, and depending on how you lived your life, you're either able or unable to remember Narayan and Krishna at the time of leaving your body. And based on that testing, your life is either successful or it falls short of success. That is a discussion that we're going to reserve for tomorrow. In the meantime, thanks for joining us. Brajapati Sutta Das. Prashant is there with all the quotes. What I'm seeing, I can't see all the comments, but from what I see, he's got Nashta Moha verse there. He's got Iti Tyanam Akyatam. He's got that verse. He's got Vishtunenat Manu Yogam. I'm sure he's left all the breadcrumbs by which you can recreate the last 45 minutes, the way that our discussion has gone. And those that have liked, and one reason that we really appreciate your hitting the like button, and I think you'll agree with me, it doesn't involve a lot of effort, is that I can see who's there, and naturally that's encouraging to me. So having passed through and dropped in and hit the like button is Manasa Ganga by Bobby, my better half. Ram Kishore, thank you. Rajapati Sutta, Lakshmi Nasringa, Stoka Krishna, Pragna Shah, Govinda Dev, Rakesh, thanks Rakesh, Anjali, our firm, staunch participant, Terry, Sanjay Sharma, Jimmy and Taruna, Rupa Manjari, and Jean. So those are the ones that have hit the like button. We have 28 comments. Please add any additional comments that linger in your mind. It's great for the interaction, for the Facebook algorithm. Share these posts with any groups that you think might have some people which would benefit from our discussion of the great Maha Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam. This has been Transcendental Tuesday. I'm Caru Das. See you tomorrow, hopefully, for Wisdom Wednesday. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.